Came from Krebs, the engineer.
Well, there's surveyors.
Okay.
Do they have an engineer? I'm just trying to understand the logic behind it and why there versus 2 feet over versus 4 feet over versus 10 feet over. What is defining where
It's
that
the,
back line of the C1?
it's that center drain that's right there to keep it off of the property line. I don't know if you can see the little circle to the right. It's that drain that is like, would become very detrimental if that would be gone. So we had a lot of flooding prior to that.
That's the drain. That's part of the drainage.
That's
that
the
was
drain,
installed.
but that's like the main drain. It's
Gotcha.
in the center collecting, because the alleyway is
dotted
about
line.
5 feet
Oh.
higher.
Yeah, the little dotted line there.
Yes.
Okay. Right below the generator.
Yeah, I see that. But I mean, but I mean, I guess
And
I'm trying to separate property line from drainage. I don't know that really, I mean, it sort of relates. You don't want to have your drainage going onto somebody else's property.
of course.
But I'm not sure I understand the logic of why the
I
property
think the
line is-
logic there is, for me, would be that what we're doing here is coming to something that would leave exposition with the amount of all of the things that it would need to qualify as a, a whole property, not like a weird L-shaped lot, things like that. And then giving that rear yard setback, the house itself on Magazine Street is actually 1,400 square feet. So I don't know if that changes the numbers. Getting the permeable space done. And then there's a property right around the corner, 718 Calhoun Street, that has the same size as a lot and a larger house. And so I was trying to keep in with it changes a lot block to block. I was trying to keep within, when you're standing in the backyard, you see another similar lot, the house.
I guess I'm just struggling a
Little
little bit
larger.
with what the criteria are for picking that back property line, because it could be 10 feet over, it could be 15 feet over. I mean, there's not I understand there's some drainage issues, those can be addressed. They could be addressed. So this is a property issue, not a drainage issue, right? I'm looking at this abstractly as just property.
Totally.
And how,
But the hardship there lies in that 3 people would have to worry about their insurance company. Again, we have insurance right now, and trying to, hey, we flood every time it rains. It's pretty difficult to try to find a new insurance provider right now.
well, that's based on your flood elevation. That has nothing to do with your drainage on your property. And they may say that you have some issues with an inspection, but
The homeowner's
owner's
insurance,
okay.
right? Not the flood insurance.
And I just want to clarify, I don't know that the insurance piece is going to fit in line with
No.
what we would consider
No.
as a hardship.
Exactly. So I guess I'm just trying to get to like, how do we?
Well, I was about
Right.
to ask, because I'm trying to understand, as you're walking through your question, Rami, I'm trying to understand how, if it's placed differently, looking at the 2 remaining variance requests. So if the placement changes, does that impact these variances? I'm just trying to understand the connection. So it would,
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to understand, or like what the staff report is saying in terms of like, what are the things, what's really the problem here, right? So
Yeah.
I'm trying.
and I was trying to get to the same, because in looking at the changes and seeing where some of the variances have been satisfied. So I'm at the same point, just trying to understand what remains and what, if anything, could be addressed to get to where we would need to for these variants.
Right. So
Yeah.
the minimum lot area versus, the back of the property. I mean, so the numbers that we're seeing on the front page, is that with the changed property line boundary condition?
The numbers, I'm sorry.
So right now,
Asking staff, the
lot area proposed is
Yeah.
1278.695. So is that the current lot area?
For the revised plan.
with the revised plans.
with the revised plans.
And then the
Um,
lot depth currently is 67 feet, and just making sure that those are the current,
When you say current, are you referring to?
the revisions
the
is
current
the most accurate,
Yes.
up-to-date
Yeah.
number.
Yes, because we were at 61 and we went to 67.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this revised proposal is better. It's clearly my opinion, but, it doesn't satisfy the, yeah.
Well, I think my
like
point
an
is,
inch- Yeah.
so it's 6 feet. So I mean, I don't understand how do you?
It was
how do you-
it was to address that rear yard, the minimum lot depth. You know, to make sure that that was taking place, because when I was looking at the statistics that you guys have on all of the variances that you provided, there have been 0 that y'all have approved with that lot setback, with that rear yard 12.2 feet. There, y'all have not approved any. And when it comes to the minimum lot area, there were 13 requests, 9 were approved, 3 were denied, and 1 was withdrawn. So what I was trying to do is take the statistics that I've learned from doing this and try and see where that could, you know, meet in the middle to get to where this could work out.
Yeah, it's the tricky thing for us is that rear yard setback's a perfect example. Right now, you're at 12.2. And,
They 13.
oh, you're at
13.5. 13.5.
13.5.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at another.
And I guess my point is an extra.
2 feet.
Well, no, an extra, yeah, to make it 15.
Well,
to
actually,
make it
but
18 or
what,
make it 20. I mean, I guess what it's like, it feels
It's-
like a negotiation about like,
yeah,
Well,
it could be
it's
6
then
feet, it could be
just
7
makes-
feet, it could be 8 feet.
when you're standing
I'm
in,
struggling a little bit with that.
when you're standing in the property, you would understand because you would be able to see how just, it would really place kind of an unusable space onto Magazine Street, and then it would create like a very awkward, you know, on Exposition Boulevard, and in trying to keep just with the fact that I've worked on these homes for 15 years, like it is standing back there and seeing that yard just sliced in half. I don't know how to say it doesn't look right, because that's not what you guys care about, but it's just historically, like,
And it's not, I mean,
You know.
it's not a not care. I mean, we're limited by what we're able to review. So it's not just haphazardly, we don't care about it, but we are
Certainly.
limited by the conditions that are appropriately before us. And I just wanted to clarify, because I know you were mentioning the rear yard setback. The only remaining variances are the minimum lot area and minimum lot depth. From looking at the report, I believe the permeable open space and rear yard setbacks have
Right.
been satisfied.
Right. So that's why it's.
and then
that
the,
dimension. So that's what I was trying to get to, is why that number and not another 5 feet, right? So.
basically because just when I was working with the engineer, looking at it aesthetically, it's not. And then also if I do another 5 feet, I lose that drain, and then I'll be back here to see you guys about permeable open space and L-shaped lots and all that for Exposition Boulevard. Because the house on Exposition is 7,000 or 8,000 square feet. So I'll be here again to see you guys if that's okay,
yeah.
So with that,
Yeah.
it will literally, like, there will be, the only part of the permeable open space on Exposition Boulevard is where the drainage is, that's the grass, and then right along the front of the Exposition Boulevard on Audubon Park. So I'll be here again with the minimum lot area probably not being met, the depth being met in an L-shaped way, and then not having enough permeable open space. So what this does is provide kind of both for both places. And again, that drain is really that's the main hardship. That's got to stay in place. Those storms came through the other night, and we were like hiding in the middle bathroom, and I went downstairs and, nothing flooded. And it was a regular thing that took place before. That Magazine Street does not have to deal with, because it's about 4 feet off the ground. Also, I don't know if it changes anything, but it's 1,400 square feet, the property at Magazine Street. It's not, I wouldn't measure the exterior walls, but, so that would be 2,800 square feet.
Wait, so the proposed is actually 14, not 12?
What?
78, is that what you're saying?
No, it's smaller than what's on there. And then the house that's on my block that, you know, I'm kind of, is the 720 Calhoun, 720 Calhoun Street. That has, a very similar lot size to this, only the house is much bigger than this one. It's a skinnier, longer lot. Ours is a fatter, shorter lot. So I just didn't want to,
And is that what, because in looking at the staff report, that's what I was trying to understand. It seems like that might be what staff was proposing because, in the staff report, it says that, lot depth could be met. But it would reduce, and I'm trying to
So
read, and it's on page 24. Under number 6 for demonstrable hardship, and it says proposed lot C1 could achieve compliance with lot depth. While correcting proposed lot B1's driveway across lot lines. It would eliminate usable green space for proposed lot B1, but it would result in a more substantial rear yard for the subject site.
I'm sorry, what page?
This is on page 24. It's responding to number 6, demonstrable hardship for the 9 criteria.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to the point that, God, how many months ago was this? Todd and I were mentioning, it's like the-
6.
that the driveway is sort of the issue, that the width, wherever that property line is, it was weird because it was cutting the driveway in half. But if you make
Correct.
the lot go to, give yourself enough room for a driveway, then you're kind of getting closer.
But then I'll have to come back here and get all these variances for Exposition Boulevard.
I mean, based on the staff report, I don't see where that's the case.
Wouldn't have to.
But
Yeah.
I think it goes back to the idea when there's alternatives that are feasible, there's no justification to say that there's a hardship.
Yeah, and
And I mean,
there's,
I've deferred to
Yeah.
as. a
And you don't
architect.
consider flooding a hardship. That my
I mean, I
neighbor
don't wanna
sent
say
in a
that it's-
letter.
that's not a property line issue. That is an issue with your site. And so what we're looking at purely the property lines, right? And what we're trying to avoid doing is taking one. We're trying not to make a substandard lot, right? That's just a typical
Right.
approach. The drainage issues are something that's an engineering challenge, and I understand, I appreciate that. I do a lot with drainage, right? So I'm understand that, but that doesn't. How your site drains and how much permeable space you have and all the paving and everything, that's a design issue that can be addressed through civil engineering. So there's a way to, there's
There's
that doesn't
other
have anything to
ways
do
to
with, that
address
doesn't have anything to do with the property line, because your current property line doesn't make, I mean, that, it's not impacting, or the drainage is drainage. So we're talking purely about the property lines. And we just have a hesitation to make substandard lots, especially when we see that there's other opportunities here to bring it into compliance. The one thing that I was gonna ask staff is with the 90-foot depth, if it had a 90-foot depth, just playing math here, it would still be too small of a site. Is that right? In terms of lot area, minimum lot area? Trying to help you out here. I'm trying to find some arguments here that are,
let's see.
Lease.
because it's,
I believe it's 90 feet for that district.
right, so it would still be a sub,
required.
even at 90 feet, it would
Yeah,
still
substandard.
be,
By area.
by area, it would be too small. Because it would have to be a 40-foot wide lot for,
That's correct.
my math is, never trust me on math, but
Going
Well, I
all the
think
way
that's kind of what they
across.
address in this, because it does,
yeah.
I think this is only speaking to the lot depth and not
Right.
the lot area.
yeah, so really, we're just.
Even in this
Right.
reconfiguration proposed by staff.
So we're really just talking about where that line is in relation to the B1 house, and it's just, I'm still just having a hard time building the argument based on what I see in the letter and arguments, because it feels still too much like I just want it this way. And I know the drainage is the challenge, and I will, I will understand that. So trying to help you out.
Thank you.
And I think, to your credit, I think that's kind of been the challenge going through this, before, is just addressing all of the different issues. And I do agree that we've gotten to a better place with, some of the variances. I think we're just left probably with the two most difficult ones.
Yeah, you just can't.
And just looking at the voting history, though, these are ones that you guys have approved before, you know,
I
and
think the challenge is that it's two of them, and there's a way to address one of them, even, with the revisions that you've made, there's still a way to account for one of the remaining variances.
so
I
how
think
much,
that is that's the piece that we're still going back and forth on, because we can see that and even staff acknowledge that there is a way to come into compliance at least with one of the two remaining.
right? I just wanted to come back with at least like a 75% of what we had originally, you know. I'm sorry to ask the question. Is this still correct after the revised proposal? Because I'm not very good at math. The required would be 3,600 square feet for an 1,800 square foot duplex. Is that correct?
That was what I was just asking about, and I think that doesn't, because the lot's narrower, right?
Well, that's the required, and
Yeah.
the proposed is the 1278 square foot for a
Right.
total of 25.
So what I was saying is that even if you, and you're saying something, Emily, because I think I was saying if you make it 90 feet, it still is less than 3,600.
Yeah, based on staff's math, even if you expand the lot out into its previous L shape, it looks like it would still be deficient in lot area.
But that would that still be a waiver? Then how would the staff report address? I mean, if they were to meet the depth,
If the applicant is able to bring the lot depth into compliance, they would still require a waiver for lot area for a two-family, and so they would come back before the board to request that single waiver.
And what lot depth is that?
The lot depth is the required 90 feet. But the lot area is the 3,600 square feet. Right now, there's two waivers before us, the minimum
Correct.
lot
Yeah,
area
yeah,
and the minimum lot depth.
right.
And what we were discussing is, based on the staff report, there's an ability to come into compliance for the minimum lot depth, but there would still be the remaining minimum lot area waiver. That would still be outstanding.
Is the figure one on page 2, the depiction of the 90 feet? So that's the existing, okay.
it's a pretty weird lot line currently, right? That's
It's super weird.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, Alfonso, you were asking about the figure on page 2 of the staff report. That's the existing conditions.
Yeah. I think what I'm struggling with here is that there was I can't see a good reason other than the drainage thing, which I don't understand because I don't see any drawings and I don't see anything that explains how this drainage works, right? To say whether it's absolutely necessary or not.
My neighbor sent in an email. Did you guys not get that? She sent it to Emily.
I know, but I'm looking for a diagram, a drawing and understanding that you can put that fence wherever you want, basically, is what I'm looking at in this backyard. If to bring it into compliance to make it 90 feet, you still have a 20 plus feet of space between the edge of the property and the back of the fence. If you made it 90 feet. So I know it doesn't make a great yard and it, makes for a less
Well, it would,
desirable backyard for B1, but you would have more compliant. You'd still need it's a very small number between the 3,600 and whatever is required for the lot area, but I guess I'm just struggling because I see an
so
option there.
you would just take it back to the original lot line?
No, I'm saying to make it 90 feet deep, as the staff was recommending, is what the requirement is. It doesn't make B1 unusable. B1 is very usable with that, may not be desirable, and that's what our struggle is because we have to meet the 9 criteria. And then one of the criteria is not, I want it this way because I want a bigger yard.
No.
And
it's
and
because
that
of the
I
drainage.
know I'm being facetious here and you're saying it's about drainage, but
Right.
I can't see that and I can't prove that. And I don't understand. And I also don't know, maybe this is a question for staff, that's not a property line issue. That is a civil engineering issue that can be addressed through design, right? So I'm trying to understand, because cost is also not a hardship, right?
Right.
Because it would be expensive to dig it up and change it. It's still something you're choosing to do, to move the lot lines. So it's hard for us to get
Well, it
past
just,
that hardship.
there's a lot of drainage competition on Magazine Street because there are no, what are those drains that are on the side of the
Yeah,
road?
I know, but there
There are none. So what this does, it takes it out to Exposition and actually gets it down into where those drains are.
I understand, but we're trying to meet the 9 criteria, one of which is the hardship is
Right.
we can't take financial things into account. So saying
Definitely
that it's
not trying
expensive to redo the drainage, not something that we can take into account. This is purely about property lines.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reasonable alternative that exists.
And there is a reasonable alternative that makes a functional driveway and a functional yard for B1. You still have over half the yard in the back is usable. So
So are you saying that to go back to what you guys,
I'm saying that I
Oh.
can't make an argument that supports this to override the 9 criteria as the staff report has laid it out. So that's where I'm struggling, that you have a solution with a 90-foot lot line that the staff report would support. And the way that it's written, I myself can't make that argument. So I'm having trouble with what we have here in this package, making that argument to override the criteria. Specifically talking about number 6?
Mhm. I mean, I think. it
Sorry,
would
I've
be
been on,
more-
it's been a month or two. So
I know.
what's the other one about financial hardship is which number? I can never.
I think there's 4 that aren't met, number 2, 4, 5, and 6.
right? So 2 is, we have a reasonable and in-place drainage solution that doesn't affect Magazine Street. 4, I think it would be the opposite of special privileges because I mean, we really have to look at the 2 properties here, not just the one. It would leave Exposition as an L-shaped lot. The minimum square footage would not be met for the size of the house, and it would not have the permeable space that it needs if we go with pushing that back. And then 5, to me, and obviously I can be corrected, the essential character of the locality, everything that has been done to both of these places has been permitted, and we've gone through the city to do everything.
This is about the property lines. This isn't about the house. This is about how this lot fits in with the context of the area. It would be an
And
outlier.
so if you're
It would be
standing
an-
in the backyard, there's a lot right next door that literally will mimic the Magazine Street lot. Where it's longer, it's thinner, it's 30. Whereas this one has like
And
35.
as the,
And
the
so what I,
staff report reads, it says, even considering that the survey data shows two properties with deficient lot area, the subject site would still be more deficient than these. It's still an outlier, even though there may be, you may be able to point out a property that's similarly situated, that's still an outlier compared to the entire locality. So that,
Right.
I understand that there may be somebody else with a similar issue, but one or two properties doesn't then become the norm. It's still
right,
the outlier.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just don't, I mean, we've kind of gone through this and I don't want to belabor the point. And I mean, there may be arguments that, you know, you're proposing, but the biggest piece that is hard to overcome, and that's why even Commissioner Diaz is bringing up number 6, even arguing that you could meet everything else. Number 6 would not be, still not be met because there's still not a demonstrable hardship that's shown. And there's a reasonable alternative that can bring you into compliance.
and what would that reasonable alternative be? Going
What
back
we-
to the regular lot
What we
lines?
brought up before was the
90
the
foot
90
depth.
feet.
So
lot
that's,
depth.
that's cutting, that's just going back to the regular lot line.
I don't know if it's
The 90-foot
going
depth,
back to the regular lot line.
I think it's adding 23 feet to what you have here. So it'd put the line more in alignment with the back of the, where the L and the house is. So it'd be a couple feet from the driveway. So it would shift over. I don't know what the, hard to read here, but I think the back. Go back to the map. Currently, the back of the lot. I'm looking at the original proposal.
Mhm,
So
I'm
the
looking
width-
at,
The width of B1 is 52.8 feet.
okay,
And C1 is 61 feet. So it'd be adding 19 feet to the back of C1, the way you had it in the original proposal, or in this current proposal, it'd be adding 20. No,
think it's
less than that.
23.
Was it 23 feet?
Mhm.
Yeah. So. Sorry, I'm off on my math, but you still have a big wide, the driveway would not be impacted.
yeah.
Would still have
So
a,
you just want to go back to the proposed that you guys proposed a few months ago.
I think that would bring it in compliance with what the staff recommendation was. Now. I think what I'm struggling with is because that's 6 foot, you put it at 6 feet from the property line. You know, it could be 7 feet, it could be 8 feet, it could be 12 feet. I haven't heard a good reason.
Put what
Why?
at 6 feet?
Right now, the property line is 6 feet from the B1. It's at 67 feet currently in your current proposal, sorry, I'm looking at all the dimensions on your survey.
Sure,
Right now, it's offset by 6 feet. Your little dog leg on the property
yes,
is only 6 feet.
right.
So, I mean,
And that was to keep the drain.
sure. Okay, so, but abstractly speaking, as property lines, it could be on the other side of the drain. It could
Of
be
course.
over closer to the driveway and your drainage would still work because.
Right, but then if two separate people owned it, what if they don't care to clean it
I mean,
or, anything like that? Because it was like bringing up, should somebody else own Magazine Street at some point? How are they going to come here and get a permit to build if the, criteria aren't met? Then we're turning this into the exposition's problem.
I don't know. I'm not sure if staff, how do we, I mean, if drainage is moving across the property line, how does that typically work in this kind of question? I'm trying to understand how that you would have to.
Because it's not.
Have to
it's
move the
not just
drainage
one,
then if
it's
that was a
like
concern.
we've literally solved it for this whole corner of houses.
Yeah.
For Magazine Street, for the 3 properties along Exposition, because on Magazine Street itself, there are no drains. So we're now bringing everything to Exposition to run off towards the lake where the drains are in Audubon Park. So that, and I know you don't, that's not something to consider, but it's extremely important just with the water that we deal with in the city to have.
But I guess the question
Proper
becomes,
drainage.
is that the only way to solve for that problem?
Yes.
But I don't know that, I mean, because you're telling me that, I don't know that that's accurate to say without a professional saying that. I mean, to Commissioner
Okay.
Diaz's point, it may cost more to make an adjustment, but a design fix could probably, we don't know, but it may account for
that's-
that same
If
for
you
that
look at that
same
spot, it's
solution.
the center. If you look
I
at that spot,
understand
it's
that,
the
but
center
the
of where all
point-
that water comes down because the alleyway is so much higher than the
I
sidewalk.
understand, but we're still going through a design discussion. That's not really for us to consider. And that's why I'm saying we can't even answer because that's not really within our purview. We can't even answer if that is the only way to solve for that issue. And it's really not one of the things for us to consider. We're still getting into a discussion that is beyond
Okay.
what we're to consider. And it's not to say that that's not important, but it's not properly before us to address
Well,
or
we-
to fix, to solve for.
In going to that, the number that Mr. Diaz was talking about, it would satisfy the minimum lot area at that point, because right now the minimum lot area, I think I'm only asking for about 300 feet at this point.
It looks like 521 square feet per dwelling unit. So a total of 1,042 square feet.
But they have that listed at 2328 square feet.
I'm looking
And
at
it's
the latest.
1400.
I'm looking at the latest, that's why we were asking staff if these numbers were accurate. I'm looking at the latest, report. And it shows the requirement is 1,800 per dwelling unit for a total of 3,600 square feet.
And that's a general, so it doesn't go by size of the house. It just goes by dwelling unit. Doesn't matter if the dwelling unit's 400 square feet, doesn't matter if it's 2,000 square feet.
Right.
So in looking at that, just in the history, you guys had 13 requests for that. You approved 9, you denied 3, and then 1 was withdrawn. I don't have the numbers on the rear yard setback, but I did see when I was going through all of the previous judgments that there were 0 approvals of the rear yard setback or permeable open space. So
I think
that's
the rear
why I
yard
took
setback-
care of those
Yeah.
2 and made sure that that was taking place.
Mhm.
And once again, I think the challenge here is because we're taking properties and moving them around and making, taking one substandard lot and shifting the substandard to a different lot. And it's just it's a
Sure, that's
trickier
why I
than
was.
when it's
That's
like,
what I'm
Yeah.
when we're
That's why I
trying to
was
develop an empty
find, like,
lot.
the right way,
Yeah. So-
I was trying to find the right way to do it and
Yeah.
then,
Yeah, so I think, my recommendation right now and we can is I think that the Article 11(3)(a)(1), which is about the lot area, that one to me, doesn't feel like, I don't know, I'm just saying, if the rear lot line were set, it seems like there's more precedent for
Yeah.
the lot area and also,
But to your point,
so-
you're shifting the line, you're taking one substandard line, and another one's going to be created and
well, it's-
and
Where your hair on
originally,
that
Question
thing.
for staff, just to clarify, I know that, when we were discussing if, we're making a decision on the minimum lot depth, that we can see where that can be satisfied, and the applicant would still have to come back for the minimum lot area. Does that mean, in terms of a decision today, does it impact, how do we need to make the decision on just the minimum lot depth? Like, I'm just trying to make sure that our decision doesn't impact the applicant's ability to come back on minimum lot area if need be.
So I know we wouldn't be able to split up your decision. You wouldn't be able to act on one waiver request today and another one next month. But if you
Okay.
did defer today, then the applicant could explore coming into compliance with lot depth. It's possible that they could come into compliance with lot area, perhaps by adding just a little bit more in lot depth beyond what's required. At that point, they could fully withdraw. Or I know in the past, when we have not known the exact waiver amount, the board has approved a waiver request in part and denied, other parts of the waiver request with the proviso that the applicant shall provide X amount of square feet based on whatever the lot depth is, if that makes sense.
yes.
I'm, it,
Go.
but it does.
so exposition is,
No, so if you do the math, it needs to be 94 feet,
Okay,
0.25 or something. So
Okay.
that's what they're required to bring that into compliance. But I guess my question was, could we approve one and deny the other? So that was the,
got it. I was a little confused on the
Yes,
degree.
you can.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, the drainage issues that you're talking about, this is all subsurface drainage?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that's where talking to an engineer. So you.
This was a
It's fairly common to have
huge
drainage
project.
lines, but it's fairly common to have drainage go under property lines. I mean, I don't know that, I'm stepping off a little out of line here, but in terms of a legal standpoint. And maybe, I don't know if we can answer this, are there ways, if you have a drainage moving through a property? Do you have to abandon it and make a new drainage, or you create some sort of servitude or a
I mean, I would
way to
think,
get through there?
yeah, that's what I was, I mean.
That's
in
what it
that
is with
world.
city drainage, but with private drainage, I don't know that it. I mean, it would be I totally understand the concern. So I'm just trying to make sure that we.
And that's why I wanted to say, I didn't want to make it seem as though it wasn't an issue that we didn't care about. It's just that it's not our issue to actually address. But I do think
Right.
probably some type of servitude to grant access or right of way for that. I agree with you. I don't know how that looks in a totally private setting. I'm always thinking in terms of public.
You're welcome to come over. Check it
but,
out.
um,
See what I've done, because I've
Not talking
really
about
tried to
I'm
do
not talking about it
everything.
physically, I'm talking about it legally, that
Right,
if
okay.
if you're putting drainage on another property, that is, I agree, that is problematic.
Right.
So I think this is, I don't know if with staff or legal, I mean, I don't want to get in trouble here saying something that makes now the lot.
The square footage of the lot, I think, can be met. Now, Exposition is considered a 6-unit dwelling. And so we are gonna run into a square footage issue there. I don't know why it is, but it's on the 1994 map.
Gonna run into multiple issues.
Yeah,
We're creating. one
that's why I'm
thing,
just
then a lot
trying
by doing
to,
Another one.
I'm trying to,
Yeah,
We were- I was asking for I was asking for everything, and now I'm
So the B1
trying to
lot,
ask for about 25%.
the B1 lot is already substandard, right? So. I guess I have a few questions for staff. So how do we resolve this? I don't want to set up something that's legally a challenge drainage wise. If we say that if there's drainage moving across property, would they have to then? That's their problem, but I don't know what the legal ramifications are of that. And then the other thing, given that it's a bunch of subsurface drainage, the other thing is she's bringing up the applicant's bringing up the does B1 need to be looked at again if the property line is 90 feet or C1, or do the recommendations all stay the same?
Lot B1 would not need to be reviewed again, because it would be made more compliant.
Okay, that was my understanding.
However, it ultimately would need to get signed off on by City Planning Commission staff as part of the subdivision, but it would not be required to go back to City Planning Commission. And no waivers would be triggered for B1 if that was part of the concern.
I think, I mean, I'm trying to respect your concern here about the drainage. I also share concerns about drainage, and I don't see any diagrams on here that explain where it is and how it's working other than a dotted circle. So I don't know where the lines
Well,
are
the
going.
dotted circle is the main drain, and then along the back
Yeah, but
original lot line is a channel drain.
is it
To
a-
Exposition Boulevard.
okay, so there's subsurface.
And then there's subsurface drains that go all the way down the left side to Exposition Boulevard. So it takes that alleyway that's about 5 feet higher than the house, and the sidewalk.
So
and
your
it
concern,
connects the
your concern is that the C1 drainage would be going through B1 to go out to Exposition.
Yes. And that,
And if they don't
They-
maintain it, then there's a problem.
right.
So I think that's where I'm not sure how the city normally.
And we
handles this
had
kind of-
about 2 years before we did all of this, living in the house. And I mean, it was regular flooding for all 3 of our houses.
But currently the condition is lot C1's flooding problem is, I mean, even if you left the property line. where it
C1
is-
doesn't flood.
If you left the property line where it is currently, without changing anything, it's the same condition. The drainage is moving cross property lines.
Right, that's why I'm asking it to be shortened
Yeah.
so that we can have that drain.
Yeah.
That's why out of the four things that I came with originally,
Yep. No,
got rid of two of them,
and
really compromised on one, and then I'm kind of a big ask on the other, and I understand that. Um,
not sure if Emily is. Are you guys conferring over there about this? I'm just trying to, I don't want to set up something that's making a drainage problem worse. And I'm not sure but it's all private, so.
Yeah, so because she owns both properties, this would be something that, should she sell the property in the future, that would be the servitude would be something that she would address during the sale privately. It wouldn't be something that would be affected by what you guys are doing today, but she would address that in the future should she sell the property. Does that answer your question or?
oh, it creates a servitude.
Well, it's not an issue now because you own both properties, right? Is that
Yeah.
what you're saying? It
Mhm.
becomes a problem when you go to sell it and an home inspector comes and looks at it and says, oh, this drain goes through your neighbor's property, just
R-
warning you. that it's
Correct,
something
and
you
that
have
would
to
be something
address.
that during the sale would
Yeah.
be addressed between
Right.
her and whoever she sells the property to.
Right, okay.
Okay.
And that's not an uncommon condition, I don't think. I mean, I know that I've got drainage and other things in my neighborhood that are going across people's properties all the time, but it's because it's a historic city, so.
Yeah.
And developments also do that as well. Larger developments where you have multiple units. So yeah, okay.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. In regards to docket 7322, I move to approve Article 11.3 A1.1 minimum lot area. Citing that the 9 criteria have been met in terms of lot area and the challenge of the narrowness of the property. But I will accept the staff recommendation and deny Article 11.3 A1 minimum lot depth. Citing that the 9 criteria have not been met. Does that work? And with the noted provisos?
I know that there were provisos listed. Are those still appropriate in this? There were 4.
They are.
Second.
With regard to BZA docket 073-22, it's been moved by Commissioner Diaz, second by Commissioner Gonzalez to approve the requested waiver of Article 11, Section 11.3.A.1, Table 11.2A, the minimum lot area, finding that the 9 criteria have been met and subject to 4 provisos, and to deny the requested waiver of Article 11, Section 11.3.A.1, Table 11.2A for minimum lot depth, finding that the 9 criteria have not been met for that noted waiver. Vote your machines. I think I got it right.
I wasn't able to push the button.
Motion carries. Next item.
The unfinished business for variances, item 2, BZA docket 081-22 was withdrawn. We'll now move on to item 3, docket number 096-22.
BZA docket 9622 is a request for a variance from the provisions of Article 11, Section 11.3.A.1 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. It's also in conjunction with subdivision docket 5122 to permit the creation of a lot with insufficient lot width. The proposed lot would have a width of approximately 28.1888 feet, which is below the required 30 feet and requires a waiver of approximately 1.8 feet. So this site previously contained multi-family residences and the proposed single-family residence is a less intensive use. And since the lot is larger than neighboring lots, the request would be more in line with the development character of the neighborhood. The staff believes this request meets all 9 of the 9 criteria for variances. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of this request, subject to 4 provisos.
Give your name and address for the record.
Good morning, board members. Whitney Clark, 4130 Canal Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70119. I'm here this morning in support of Hammerhead Development LLC's variance request for proposed lot M1A3. This request is in conjunction with subdivision docket 051-22, which is a subdivision of 2 existing lots into 3 separate lots. In order to subdivide the 2 properties into 3 proposed lots, one of the lots will be slightly deficient in lot width. The deficient proposed lot meets all other requirements, including having a sufficient lot depth and lot area. As noted in the staff report, the variance is in line with the development pattern of the neighborhood, with at least 17% of the surveyed properties in the neighborhood also showing deficient lot widths. Approval of this variance will allow Hammerhead Development to build 3 new single-family residences. We respectfully request approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 096-22? Anyone here in opposition? Any questions from the board? Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, let's see, regarding BZA docket 096-22, I move for approval of the variance of section of Article 11, Section 11.3.A.1, finding that the applicant has met all 9 of the 9 criteria, and also based on the staff's recommendation, but also subject to the 4 noted provisos.
I can hear you. I don't know if it's going, the mics, but I heard you. With regard to BZA docket 096-22, it's been moved by Commissioner Gonzalez, second by Commissioner Eggins, to grant the requested waiver of Article 11, Section 11.3.8.1, Table 11, 2A for minimum lot width, finding that the 9 criteria have been met and subject to 4 provisos. Vote your screens. The motion carries. Next item.
We will now begin with unfinished business for safety and permits decision appeals. Would the chair please read the hearing rules for decision appeals?
Rules and procedures for public hearings, appeals of decisions of the Director of the Department of Safety and Permits. The following procedures shall be observed during the appeal hearing. Each speaker shall give their name and address prior to speaking on the proposal. The representative of the Department of Safety and Permits shall present to the board the decision which is under appeal, the relevant code sections relating to the appeal, and any information explaining the department's decision. The applicant or representative will speak next. The presentation shall be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes for each applicant or representative speaker, but in no event shall the cumulative presentation total by applicants or their representatives exceed 15 minutes. Proponents or persons in favor of the proposal will speak next and be allowed 3 minutes per speaker. Opponents or persons in opposition of the proposal will speak next and be allowed 3 minutes per speaker. The applicant or representative will be allowed a rebuttal. The rebuttal shall be limited to a cumulative maximum of 5 minutes. For an exceptional case, the time limitations may be extended by the presiding officer with the approval of the board. As the board deems necessary, the case may be acted upon at this meeting or deferred for additional information or review. If the case is deferred, it will be acted on at a subsequent meeting as provided by law. All proper parliamentary procedures shall be followed, including recognition of speakers, relevance of argument, and absolute prohibition of applause or demonstration. Standard of review. The Board of Zoning Adjustments has the power to hear and decide appeals where it is alleged there's an error in any order, requirement, decision, or determination made by an administrative officer in the enforcement of the comprehensive zoning ordinance. The board also has the power to hear and determine appeals from applicants who have been refused a building permit because of a violation or conflict with the zoning ordinance or the official map of the city. The applicant's appeal to the Board of Zoning Adjustments is governed by Section 5-408 of the City of New Orleans Home Rule Charter.
The next item is BZA 095-22.
Good morning, Board. My name is Ashley Becknell. I'm the Chief Zoning Official. For this docket item, we are requesting an additional 30-day deferral. We've conferred with counsel for the applicant, and we are continuing to work towards a resolution that does not require the appeal, but we want to keep the item moving, so we'd like to defer it for 30 days if possible.
Thank you. Is there anyone here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 095-22? Anyone here in opposition? Any questions from the board? I know you said you spoke with the applicant's counsel, so I'm assuming they were aware of the appeal request.
Yes,
The deferral request.
yes, they are in agreement. We are continuing to work together.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Motion's in order.
Yes, proceed.
Regarding docket number BZA 095-22, I move to defer the matter for 30 days.
Second.
With regard to BZA docket 095-22, it's been moved by Commissioner Rufo, second by Commissioner Gonzalez to defer the matter 30 days. Vote your machines. The motion carries. Next item.
We will now begin with new business for variances. The applicant for BZA docket 00123 submitted documents past deadline that they would like the board to review. Would the board consider a motion to suspend the rules to accept the documents past deadline?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Rufo, second by Commissioner Gonzalez to suspend the rules and accept documents submitted past the deadline. Vote your screens. Just want to clarify, it was moved by Commissioner Rufo and second by Commissioner Gonzalez. Gonzalez. The motion carries. Proceed.
We'll now hear item 5, docket number 001-23.
BZA docket 00123 is a request for a variance from Article 21, Section 21-6T3, mechanical equipment location for a property located on a corner lot at 1734 Amelia Street. The property is located on the corner of Amelia and Barone, 2 blocks off St. Charles Avenue. It is developed with a single-family home and measures approximately 61 feet wide and 88 feet in depth. Per the attached survey, the interior side yard measures approximately 5 feet 3 inches, and the corner side yard measures approximately 5 feet 9 inches. For mechanical equipment such as an electric generator, the CZO requires them to be placed either in the rear yard or the interior side yard. The applicant is proposing placing their generator, which measures approximately 46 by 27 inches in the corner side yard behind an existing fence on the Barone Street side, rather than the Carondelet side or the rear as regulations require. After reviewing the application, staff has found that the applicant fails to meet 6 of the 9 criteria for the waiver approval, including criteria 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7 of Article 4. Overall, staff found that there is no hardship as the rear and side yard setbacks at this lot offered space for interior or rear yard placement. The rear and side yards are generally larger than many of the surrounding properties where structures were historically built to or near to the property line, as was common during that period. The measurements provided in the attached survey indicate that the corner side yard, interior side yard measure have only marginal differences in width, with the interior side yard measuring 5 feet 3 inches and the corner side yard measuring 5 feet 6 inches. However, in correspondence following the deadline, the applicant has provided some materials that indicate that there were discrepancies in that survey and reality on the ground there, which I'll have now. However, in light of this new information, the recommendation does not change, that there would still be ample room in the rear yard for placement of the generator. The application materials indicate that the primary reason for avoiding the rear yard placement of the generator was not to interfere with their current off-street parking and not to interfere with future plans for the construction of a swimming pool. While these issues do represent an inconvenience for the applicant, staff did not find that they constitute a demonstrable hardship as required by the CZO. Looking at the previous cases for placement of a generator, there's only been one case that was not withdrawn before coming before this board. That was a case in the Lakewood neighborhood in an SLRS3 suburban zoning district. That case can't really be viewed as analogous to this one, as a subject property featured a highly unusual lot orientation that y'all may recall. Essentially, the front yard there was functioning as a side yard or vice versa. So with that said, because this case fails to meet 6 of those 9 criteria, staff recommends denial.
Can you give your name and address for the record?
My name is Alicia Donald, 1734 Amelia Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70115.
Go ahead with your comment.
We have, the applicant has received a report in which states that ample space under item 1 is available in the interior side yard as well as the rear yard. The evidence that I brought forth shows information on the ground, which shows and demonstrates that the interior side yard measurements the measurement from the report were based upon the survey that I had done in regard to requesting the waiver for the variance. But on the ground, as seen in the photographs that I can provide here, there is a fence between the dwellings, between this current property as well as the neighboring property. And the fence measures 57 inches from the dwelling. The generator purchased measures 46.5 inches by 26.8 inches, allowing for 15 inches on each side. That does not provide the required 24 inches from the property line, as well as the 18 inches from the dwelling that we are informed by the installer is required. With regard to the rear yard, it does not provide a complete solution, for the ordinance does require that the generator is placed 24 inches from all property lines, as that information was provided by Mr. Walters. However, the installer for the generator says that the city inspectors that come out are requiring 36 inches from all property lines, as well as 36 inches from pools, as well as 18 inches from the dwellings, and then the appropriate amount of spacage from bollards that would separate any mechanical equipment from any vehicles. Denial of the waiver under this report would deny the applicant the ability to safely maintain pre-existing off-street parking on the property, as well as to make upgrades to the property that would increase the value of the home. Under item 2, to deprive the applicant of the rights commonly enjoyed, the staff data do demonstrate that at least 29% of the nearby properties in the neighborhood are not in compliance with the ordinance of the generator placement. And while 29% is certainly not adhering to the definition of common, it does show that homes in the area and dwellings in the area have been allowed to place generators outside of the ordinances. With regard to number three, given the nature of our works as professionals and first responders, is particularly during time of emergencies, weather emergencies, as well as the day-to-day needing to enter and exit the home before and after daylight hours. It is not merely a convenience for the applicant, it is a matter of safety for the applicant as well as the family that resides in the dwelling. As mentioned earlier, the applicant, the actual measurements on the ground do not permit the generator to be placed on the interior side yard with the measurements required in the ordinance. For number four, as stated earlier, there are other properties that have been granted the ability to place a generator on the property that are not in compliance with the ordinance.
That's the end of your time. Is there anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 1-23? You could come up, please. And give your name and address for the record.
I live at the same address, Chancellor Donald. I don't know if I'm allowed as someone who lives in the same address, but we both are physicians that get code grade with Katrina. We were here for Katrina. So this allows us to be in the city and it gives us safe space for our two young children to be in the backyard without the problems of a possible mechanical issue with the pool that would be installed, or just overall an eyesore to place it in the middle of the backyard.
Is there anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 001-23? Anyone here in opposition? Any questions from the board? I had a couple of questions for the applicant. I noticed, I know you were going through the comments just now, and I didn't see a written response to the 9 criteria included in the staff report. So your comments from today were your only documented response to the 9 criteria?
I submitted with the initial application for waiver, a printed document, a typed document, which outlined each of the 9 variance qualifications and submitted that via email. That was, I believe, in October.
Anybody else see that in their report? No, the additional information was just the email about the measurement.
That was an email, forgive me, I need to search my emails to see. This was prior to the dialogue with Mr. Walters. I believe it was with Miss Jones. There were a couple of people, forgive me, I didn't realize that that would not be accessible to you all today.
Yeah, the only thing I see is the communication between you and Mr.
I believe there's Miss Jones, and I believe, forgive me, there's a first name, maybe Valerie Goins, Miss Valerie Goins on October 31st. I have it, as well as there was some correspondence and another attachment on November 18th.
If that was mistakenly omitted on my part, I can forward that to you now. Would that be acceptable?
Is that still part of our motion to suspend the rules?
It was intended to be part of the application packet.
Yeah, it should have been part of the record for you to review. So we don't need to suspend the rules for that.
And I guess my second question was still kind of tied to the 9 criteria. I know you've mentioned a little bit of the discussion around an alternative location for the placement. And I just, because based on the report from staff, the appropriate locations would be the side yard or the rear yard, the other side yard or the rear yard. And I believe the initial email addressed the fencing preventing the ability to use one side yard. But in terms of the rear yard,
The yard is completely enclosed with a 9-foot wooden fence. So the only the front elevation of the house, the Amelia Street with the front door is visible from the street, and only the front porch is visible from the front porch going back to the property line on 3 sides. It's enclosed in the 9-foot wall, the 9-foot fence.
I'm understanding, but the front yard, even with that, is not based upon current provisions. That is not the appropriate place for it to be located. So my question is, the alternative was mentioned as the rear yard or the side yard. The other side yard, other side yard, there was the point of where the fence is located. So my question is, why hasn't the rear yard been considered?
So
Recognizing the discussion around possible upgrades, which aren't part of what we would consider in terms of a hardship. So is there some other specific hardship that's preventing you from being able to place it in the rear yard?
those things did not become to our attention until after the report was sent to us on Wednesday evening. The new items for submission are photographs of the interior side yard as well as the rear yard. And after discussing with the installer of the generator, who agreed that the measurements are inadequate on the interior side yard, which was the primary site that was recommended by the staff, the issue was then also in my discussions with the installer of the requirements of it being 3 feet from the property line, 18 inches from the dwelling, as well as a certain amount of, a period of time from, a certain amount of space from any bollards that would be required to be placed in the backyard adjacent or near any vehicles. The caveat to that was that Mr. Walters did say that, for his understanding, it was a measurement of only 2 feet from the property line. But my installer says that the city inspectors that come by are requiring that they put it 36 inches from not only that, but from any pool. And then he needed to check the measurements of any distance from the bollards, which would minimize, and I have a photograph here, any space available for a pool after those requirements would be met.
Yeah, I don't see the specific, in looking at the staff report, I think we only have directly where the placement should be. I don't see where it specifies the distance, the specific distance amount. I'm just seeing the placement to be either the interior side or rear yard.
So I suppose the reason that I bring up the measurements is because if this the measurement and request for the permit originally were based upon measurements that we were instructed by the installer that are required by the city, we applied those in thinking about moving forward with other locations. So if it's simply, so would those measurements apply? I suppose is my question, because we do not have sufficient space for all of those things, it would seem. I'm trying to avoid having to resubmit and reapply. And in bullet number 3, I believe they were mentioning the setback space under in the staff report.
I see where it references the side yard, but I don't see where it indicates what the rear yard requirements are, what it needs to. In looking at number 3 in the staff report, it just indicates ample space to accommodate the proposed generator and the required setback of 2 feet. But that's on the interior side yard. I'm not seeing the specific 2 feet from, I think you said vehicles and a pool.
So yes, that came from, I don't have specifics because we have not been denied a permit for there. We haven't applied for it yet. But naturally, I had a conversation with the installer, and they're involved with many installations in this process with other locations. And they are instructing that the requirement is bollards would be placed around vehicles and the distances from not only water surfaces, but the property line. And again, I'll add their experiences based on what the city inspectors are requiring of them after they install the generators and come back for inspection. Do I need to provide with the photographs and measurements that are here? Or?
No, I mean, unless another board member needs to see it. I'm just still trying to follow from the information in the staff report and line it up against the discussion. Did anyone else have any other questions? I'm sorry.
Just to be totally clear with staff, the corner yard is not permitted at all, right? That's the challenge. It has to be interior, it has to be rear, right? In this district.
Yes, from my understanding of the CZO. corner-
My understanding of that is that there is in the neighborhood, I think it is BZA 050-22 that is in the neighborhood where the generator was allowed to be placed without the variance. I understand it's not the exact footprint of this lot in question. And in addition, there are the 29% of the other properties in the neighborhood that have allowed generator placement without adhering to all the variances.
And I just want to clarify, because it's not that they've allowed it, because they do specify that the other ones are non-compliant. So I don't know if those have not been approved. I'm assuming that they haven't. I know that they haven't been brought to us because there's not a BPA
Right.
reflected. So are those non-approved placements?
So that was just for the nonconformity of the lot. It was very difficult, if not impossible, to do a survey of a generator using aerial imagery. And a search of of those same properties didn't return any previous variances. So if they do exist, they're either illegal or historically non-conforming, maybe.
So I just wanted to clarify, it's not that they're allowed.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna be seeing a lot, I'm sorry, I'm extemporizing here, but we're gonna be seeing a lot of these kind of requests because generators are becoming more and more common and they don't really fit very well in our lots.
Particularly in
So,
some of these areas,
Yeah.
you know, some of our older neighborhoods especially.
Well, I will
But
be,
I think the challenge that I'm seeing with this one, and I think it's been said a few times, is that you've got this big yard in the back. I know you have plans for it for the future, but you have a compliant location for it there currently available to you. And I think that's where I'm struggling with this as well. And if it were a matter of like, oh, that space behind the fence on the side was maybe the wrong, you know, like it's the fact that it's prohibited from corner yards completely that makes it hard for me to see. I mean, it looks like a great spot for it. Just looking at it, right? Makes sense, but the code says, you know, no corner side yards. So I think I'm kind of struggling here a bit myself because you know, yeah, it's going to take up space. And we've had a few come before us as well, where there's a pool in the backyard and there was a generator concern or equipment related to that as well. There's equipment related to swimming pools needed as well. And
Yes,
absolutely.
there may be a solution to lift up the generator and build it up higher and put the equipment underneath it for the pool. And there, I mean, I'm not an expert on generators. I've never
Well,
actually
and I
dealt
think
with
the
one
only time
other than
even
with big
for-
pump stations, which those are the size of your house. So
Yeah, I think the only ones, and even referencing the one from last year, I think it was a situation. That's why I was asking about the specifics on the yard. From what I was seeing, I wasn't seeing anything in the rear yard that was specifically prohibiting it. And I think those were the only situations where there just wasn't a legally compliant option anywhere else on the property. And in this scenario, to Commissioner Diaz's point, there seems to be a legally compliant, may not be the choice of the applicant, but that seems to be a legally compliant option. And again, I'm not an expert on generators. I don't claim to be an expert on many.
I do know that there are some challenges with locations of windows nearby. And
There are
others, so you
challenges with
can't-
locations of windows. There are challenges with water concerns and safety of this electrical equipment near a pool. And while it does not seem like there is currently a hardship, I would submit that this does deny the applicant the ability to make upgrades that would improve the the property value of the home, not only about convenience, but then in addition to the safety issue of just having parking. I mean, we all live in New Orleans right now. And-
I mean, I don't want to belittle the ability to improve the home, but that wouldn't be considered a hardship. That may be a convenience that just like everyone can't have a generator, everyone can't have a pool and a generator. So
I agree.
for
I
me-
wasn't suggesting it was a hardship, but more of a denial of a privilege with the ownership of a property.
Correct, and that's exactly it. It would be a privilege. And so I think it may be worth going back to the architect. I'm not sure who was working with.
You were just working with a generator supplier, right? Or a person that would be
Well, it would
installing
be
it.
the installing company for the generator as well as for the pool.
Because it probably would just be worth working with those two together to figure out some type of alternative, whether it's, I mean, I don't know about pool design. I don't know if there's a way to reconfigure the pool, reduce the size to somehow be able to have both options available. But that, in our minds, given that we can see that there's a location in the rear yard, it's hard to establish that hardship has been met.
Yeah, and there may be some, I know this all costs money, but talking to a landscape architect or an architect that could help with this, to think about some more creative solutions, because there are structural ways to lift up the generator,
Well,
get it.
absolutely.
used
There are those
instead
that
of
are putting them
something
on
where you-
roofs, is my understanding.
Yeah, and maybe there's some way to, and then of course there's rear yard structure challenges and things like that, there's a whole can of worms here, but
And that's what I was thinking, like one move
yeah,
creates another
exactly.
possible concern.
And I think the challenge is that we're trying to anticipate where a swimming pool is, which isn't there, right? And there's lots of space in that backyard to put the generator currently, so.
If you'd like, again, I could submit the photographs and you can get it.
Well, but it doesn't, there's this, you can put it in the corner of the yard, right? Or you can put it right behind where the parking is. You can fit it there. It means that then you're gonna have a challenge with a pool later, so, but that's not a hardship by our standards, so I think. I would recommend maybe deferring and talking to some professionals that are, maybe a little more creative than just the people that install the generator. Because they might not be as, there might be a solution there that we're not seeing. That's vertical.
Yeah, and that's why I was like, I don't want to make an assumption because that is definitely outside of my wheelhouse. Any other questions? Go ahead. You need to come to the mic.
Again, thank you for your time. We're here to actually apply for a waiver of the established rule. Not challenging the rule, but we do believe that the unique size of this property actually being as large as it is to accommodate it on that side, to be furthest away from any neighbors with the sound of a generator, to be unobstructed of the historical view or won't change the view at all. To sort of understand what's said about the rear yard as an option. But the uniqueness of the size and the privacy that would be afforded by that fence, and the fact that it would be away from the neighbors. I do think this does consider not changing the rule of the corner lot, but an exceptional case that would provide a waiver.
I mean, definitely, hear what you're saying. I think we go back to the challenge being that, while it may not be the ideal placement, the fact that we can see that there is an additional location that can be utilized. That's why we can't see, a justification for granting the waiver of the rule. So that's kind of what the conversation with Commissioner Diaz and myself, what we were walking through, is the fact that we do see that there's an additional location that's available on the property.
And I'm just speaking once again extemporaneously here that the larger zoning concern about generators, I don't know if I'm not sure where we are in the process of zoning changes in the long term, but I feel like this is going to come before us more and more and more.
Oh, I
wanting to
absolutely
put
agree.
generators in places that are currently not allowed, and so.
And there's so many, I think,
Yeah.
We haven't even gotten to some of the safety concerns because in this scenario, there may be enough space to account for most of the safety concerns, but there's also safety concerns with, you know, the proximity to somewhat discussed here because of the location of the pool. But I agree. I think there's a lot of,
Because I mean, as I see it, I totally understand. There's like a nice little spot for it right there where you guys have that fence, but it doesn't, once again, there's a hardship. There's not a hardship here, so I'm struggling. So I mean, I would recommend deferring and seeing if there's another way to do this and maybe find a better justification in the criteria. And then,
yeah, because I think we're kind of making some assumptions.
Yeah.
And there may be, you know, the professionals, because again, we're not experts in dealing with these. So the professionals may have a way to address some of these concerns and still get you to where you want to be. So rather than us just making a decision with the information we have in front of us, I think deferring and giving yourself an opportunity to consult with some professionals on appropriate placement might be the better option.
yeah, and there may be a creative solution that we're
Yeah.
just not seeing, as I said, where there's might be a spot that, you know, or lifting it up or doing something with it to make it, you know, not just on the ground.
Mhm.
So my recommendation would be to defer for, is it, you say 60 days these days? to
Well, that's what I was,
do time?
because I was gonna suggest, if you're okay with a deferral, the 60 days, because you may need to consult with more than one, because you have the pool professional as well as the installer, and to give yourself enough time, I would say 60-day deferral to allow for you to be able to have those conversations.
If I could just echo exactly what you said, safety is the biggest concern that we have. To place it in the backyard with our two young children, even without a pool, when I understand the ordinance, but when there's ample protected side space on a corner side of that large lot, again, we just,
And I think the problem is that that's not what's permitted. And so right now, what we're saying is that there may be a way to account for the safety concern. What Commissioner Diaz mentioned is there may be ways to elevate it. There may be some design that can be done to account for that safety concern. So that's why we're saying, you know, if you have the ability to consult with professionals that can address some of those concerns, that would be the better option. But for us right now, the location that's proposed isn't the permitted location, and we can see where there's a location that exists in the rear yard. So I just wanted to confirm, is the 60-day deferral to give you time to have those conversations before we,
And the other option would be 30, but while that seems like a lot of time, 30 days, you got to still get it through the process of the city, which takes
right,
some
because I
time.
think the deadline is probably in like a week. to Get updated information. So the 60 days gives you enough time to do those conversations and get any revisions or revised plans to staff before the meeting deadline dates.
Honestly, the generator's been sitting there for months at this point, so 60 days is fine.
Any other questions from the board?
Well, and the other option is to bring it into compliance and just do it, then you can withdraw it. But yeah, if you want to move it someday.
Well,
down
and
the road.
I forgot to mention, if through conversations with.
I can't hear what he said.
Well, I'll, if through conversations with your professionals, if there's a way to make the placement in compliance, then you don't need to come back before us. So if you come up with a solution with your design professionals to place it in a compliant position before the 60 days, you don't need to come back to us. You can just withdraw your request.
You would withdraw the request and apply for a permit again? Or-
Well, I think at that point, if it's in a compliant location, the permit would be granted. Is that correct, staff? So your permit would then be granted.
so because of the process for the documentation, even though we brought up these concerns, is the interior side of the home considered compliant by the city based on the staff's report? And this is when the professional asks us.
That weren't accurate. Is that something that needs to be addressed? The side, trying to remember, interior
Question.
side.
The interior
had,
side yard.
Had incorrect measurements. Is that something that can be corrected?
We could update the report, but I think the recommendation would stay the same given the rear yard.
Okay.
So,
But But if it fits in the
But,
side
but would
yard,
it allow, would the side yard be allowed?
With the interior, with the,
The interior side, would the interior side yard be allowed if the space is there? Even if a recommendation was for the rear yard?
Mhm.
If he wasn't non-compliant and putting it in his side yard, could that be something they could explore?
to clarify, it's allowed in the interior side yard and it's allowed in the rear yard, right?
correct. It
just
sounds
have to
like
have an
for
OC.
their generator installer, for
The measurements
for
for
their
the side
specs,
yard.
they didn't want to install it on the side yard, given the measurements on the ground
There's,
here.
okay.
So,
I think it's not that they didn't, I think the issue is that based on the measurements for the interior side yard, it won't meet the requirements. And they just wanted to clarify that because of that, the
Okay.
only viable option would be the rear yard and just making sure that those measurements are updated and that doesn't change the recommendation, which I think you indicated it didn't change the recommendation.
my understanding of Article 2160 is that it just needs to be 2 feet from the side property line,
Correct. They only have 15 inches.
15 inches. So that would make, I guess, the rear yard the only option there.
And just to be clear, where does the front yard start versus the side yard in this shape of the house? I'm looking at the survey right now and
That's a great question, and one I think we'll have to refer to safety and permits, because I do think the spirit of the ordinance is to prevent someone from just putting a generator on a corner, whereas this kind of effectively is the rear yard. You know, when you think about a backyard, it's like a rear side yard, but per safety and permits, it's the side yard. So that could be something we could revisit with safety and permits there.
well, that the house addresses, the reason why I'm asking this is the house addresses Amelia. Then it kind of jogs a bit. So where were you proposing to put it, the generator? Were you proposing to put it in the narrow space of the
We,
walkway or in that front kind of lower left space that's behind I don't know if the mouse can go down a little bit on the left side of the house, down, that spot right there.
are you asking me? You're referring to?
Yeah, where were you guys looking to put the generator?
With the original request
Yeah.
and permit, if you look at the corner of Amelia and Barone, there is a walkway behind the 9-foot fence
Yeah, I
right
got
beneath
that.
your cursor.
I got
If you
that. but
bring
the
that
interior-
down.
But the interior side yard is on the left side.
Yes,
So on the left side of the house, there's a space between the porch and where it bumps out again.
no, that's not where we proposed to put it because that would be the front yard. So the left
the front-
interior side yard is behind the fence.
But the
So if you see that the footprint of the dwelling
what
has
you,
an,
what you consider the front yard and what the zoning considers the front yard is a different matter.
Separate thing.
So the front yard is actually, my understanding is it would be right where the front of the house addresses Amelia Street. And that bump is actually that your side yard starts. So if you can look at the porch and go up to the lower left corner of the house. Right there, yeah. So
point.
everything behind that line, everything behind the front of the house back is side yard. So what I'm asking is that space that's that little, I don't want to I wish I had a laser pointer.
That little alley.
That little space, that little narrow, that's way too narrow. But as you go south on the drawing here,
That's also side yard.
that's also side yard, that little space that's wider as it comes down.
And you could theoretically put the generator there and move the privacy fence to
Yeah.
hide it.
But that's what we're trying to get clarity on whether or not that's part of what you want to get
We
clarity.
We did allude to that option in the report. Emily, I guess it would still be a safety and permits. It sounds like that would qualify as side yard.
So it,
It would. The front yard is set by the furthest point of the front facade.
Yep.
And so anything behind that would be considered the interior side on the left
So
side.
that would be.
So that
potentially
spot could
compliant.
possibly be a.
Yeah.
But would that go against changing the character of the neighborhood,
no,
given that it's visible readily from the street?
no, the safety and she just clarified the definition of the interior side yard. And the rules say that they can put it in the exterior side yard. The question is, will the mechanical equipment fit there? My guess is it would, because that's a
Yeah, but
pretty
you need,
large
but you need
space,
to
but
talk.
I'm not that's for your professionals.
So let's go back to the recommendation that we defer it so you can talk to the installers because there are some windows there as well, right? So that may not, so there may
And
be.
that's
a-
why I'm like, I don't want to immediately
Yeah.
say that the answer is yes, because if it hasn't been fully
Yeah.
considered. There may be other, as we realize, every time you change placement, it brings up
Yeah,
other
exactly.
concerns,
So-
namely safety.
Right, so I'm gonna go back to my recommendation that we defer so you guys can talk to your professionals and, I mean, that seems like a compliant location from a zoning standpoint. Does it fit? And doesn't meet the requirements. Your neighbors might not like it, but nobody likes generators, so.
I do want to note that per 2160, it will require screening at that location where it's visible from the right of way. So
Okay.
just
Yeah.
for the architect there.
You'd have to put a privacy fence.
Can
like
you,
those neighbors.
can you repeat that? I cannot hear.
It would require screening if it's in that location. If you were to put placement there, so that would just be an additional requirement. to,
And your neighbors have a fence there, so it would tie into their fence, that gate. So you'd end up putting a little gate across there, which would reduce your kind of the overall space of your sort of front yard there a little bit, but it would give you more security.
But it works and it keeps it away from the pool. Something to consider.
And one last question, because we're talking about where the side yard begins and the front yard ends, where does the rear yard begin on that diagram?
Question to Emily, which I would guess would be that furthermost rear corner of the house, but you tell us.
We actually have a diagram we can share that might be helpful.
One other argument for this location, which when you talk to your mechanical guys, that's also where your electrical service is coming in, it looks like. So having the generator where your electrical service comes into the building is great. So
So if I could just clarify, if it is our understanding based on this discussion that the staff report suggests this interior side yard and provided that it meets the requirements of distance from a window, we would only be subject to a surveillance, excuse me,
Well, to the privacy screening. But we're not sure, what Commissioner Diaz was mentioning is that we don't know about the windows, if there are other issues that may need to be considered. But to just look at that as a possible option that solves for the rear yard concerns that you all have. So in going to speak with your design professionals, the installation person and as well as well, probably not the pool person at that point, but the professional installer to ensure that it meets all of the other requirements for placement. And it's basically the area there's that space that's a little bit larger on that interior side yard and looking at that particular area.
I wish I could share my screen. But this is can you see your house?
yes,
So I'm talking about your neighbor has a little fence right there.
yes.
So you would continue that fence across and then there's some room back there and there's no windows until you get up to the upper level. So I think you should talk to your guys about that. And also your electrical service is coming in right there. So
That's
you have your
interior
disconnect
side
right
yard.
there. So you wouldn't have to run all the way back to the backyard with the electrical service.
And in an ideal world, if that were to fit within the ordinance mathematically,
Yeah. So
that would require what at this point? Do we
Right.
need to
So-
resubmit or?
No,
Well,
what you
you
would
might-
do is if it meets the requirements for placement, then you don't have to, you
don't
would
have to-
just
okay.
withdraw your
BZA,
variance
yeah.
request and then working with safety and permits to do what you would need to do
Yeah.
for your permit at that point.
And this diagram is pretty clear, except that your house has got a lot of bumps on it.
You got the
Right.
bump outs,
So,
which work to your favor here.
right, exactly. So the front yard really starts where your porch is, or about just behind the porch and forward. And the side yard is everything behind that front corner of the building back. So you've got a wider side yard for the first 10 or 15 feet of the house. And
It's
then
a
it gets
blessing.
narrower. So it seems like it might work there. So 60 days, 30 days?
I think still
60,
stick with the
yeah.
60 days.
60.
60 days.
And just to reiterate, if you're able to comply with the placement before those 60 days, you don't have to come back to us. So you would be able to just proceed with withdrawing your request.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for catching that.
Well, I mean, I was stuck at looking at the backyard. So motion to order? In regards to BZA 00123, I move to defer for 60 days.
Second.
With regard to BZA docket 001-23, it's been moved by Commissioner Diaz, second by Commissioner Gonzalez to defer the matter 60 days, giving the applicant time to research the alternative placement location suggested. Vote your screens. And motion carries. Next item.
Item 6, docket number 002-23. BZA 002-23, 4629 Willow Street is a request for a waiver from Article 11, Section 11.3.B.3, Article 22, Section 22.8.A.1.B, Article 22, Section 22.11.D.1, and Section 22.11.D.2 to allow for parking in the front yard of a single-family development in which the front yard is impermissible in the HURD2 zoning districts. The applicant intends to construct a parking pad that measures 18 by 8.5 feet, which provides enough space for one off-street parking space. The driveway will be constructed of limestone, which is a porous material and counts towards the permeability of the front yard. In accordance with Article 11, Section 11.3.B.3, parking is prohibited in the required front and corner side yards. Also, Article 22, Section 22.8.B.1 prohibits vehicular parking on the public right-of-way or between the street line and the nearest point of the front facade of any building, in addition to the other two sections that prohibit parking pads in the front yard. Additionally, this property is eligible for the exemption of Article 22, Section 22.5.8.2, in which all single-family and two-family dwellings in the historic urban neighborhood districts on lots of 30 feet or less are exempt from all off-street vehicle parking requirements. Staff finds that the request fails to meet standard 1 as there are no special circumstances which are peculiar to the property. Standard 3, in which the circumstances for the request were caused by the applicant. Standard 6, as the front yard parking regulations will not result in a demonstrable hardship. And standard 7, in which the installation of front yard parking is purely based on the desire of the property owner. Therefore, staff recommends denial of BZA docket 002-23.
Good morning. You can give your name and address for the record.
Bradley Miller, 4629 Willow Street.
You can go ahead with your comments.
Yes, so I am the contractor and the owner. When I bought this property in 2020, June 2020, we proposed the plan. There wasn't any problem with parking. Since then, the businesses in the area have developed quite a bit, as well as the residential area has developed. We're on the corner of Oshner, the corner is Oshner Baptist. The streets are flooded with cars every day, all day, and that was, I bought it 2.5 years ago, a little over 2.5 years ago. Whenever I started the construction, we didn't really have that problem. However, Oshner has actually employed 4,600 people since I originally proposed the construction. Since we had started the construction, rather, sorry. And it is quite a problem, with all the residents on the street. So I'm trying to have this, to get the variance so that we can go ahead and put a driveway there, to make things a little bit easier, relieve that pressure on the street. We're having to park 2 blocks away to load in groceries, it is pretty tough. As well as the other residents, the streets are flooded from people from Oshner, on our street.
Is that the end of your comments?
I'm sorry.
I was just making sure that was the end of your comments.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 002-23? Anyone here in opposition? Any questions from the board? Just a quick question. This was a new construction. It was a vacant lot prior to you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And as I had stated, before, when I bought the property, we didn't have any issues. Since then, I'm sure you guys are pretty aware that area is starting to blow up all the way around. And it has become quite a bit of an issue since.
And the parking lot next door, is that for the hospital?
It's for another business, Planned Parenthood, I believe.
Okay.
And I think they may have just sold that building as well. As well as around the corner, there's another, something core, building, Army Corps building, I believe, and that stays pretty booked. It's a developing area, majorly. So we've been trying to have to work around that, and it's been pretty tough.
So there's a lot of new construction in the neighborhood that has compliant parking. Because I'm just not sure I understand. This is a new construction. You just didn't think you needed the driveway, or?
No, like I said, whenever, I bought it 2.5 years ago, we didn't have any issues with parking,
But did you build the house?
I did, yes, sir.
I mean, it's a really nice house.
Thank you very much.
I
I mean, that's
I'm just a
the
little-
goal,
little-
right?
Little confused.
I really appreciate it. But like I said, we didn't have any issues prior. The neighborhood, I didn't necessarily expect Oshner to hire that many people as well, right? And I mean, our streets are flooded with cars. It's pretty tough, not just for me. I'm sure probably end up seeing some more of the neighbors come before you guys as well,
Yeah, so I mean, the trick to the housing typology you see around the neighborhood is that they basically create a side yard so that you can park in the side yard. Correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but that's kind of the typology of the L-shaped house with the parking on the side.
Yes, and
Because you're not allowed to park in front of the house. Now, looks like you're parking in front of the house, but it's to the side and the porch projects past the parking. So I'm just not sure that there's any fix to this.
there are other homes in the neighborhood that do have parking directly in front of their homes without that setback that I have. Which is what, really one of the main things that I would require, which is why I wanted to push forward with this. Because I do have the amount of space, right, for the setback, even though it wasn't originally what I intended. But like I said, the overcrowding is made me want to push forward with it.
So I guess what I'm seeing in the neighborhood is either people are parking in their side yard, or the house is set really far back, which is not allowed now anyway. And the code is written to make it so you can't park in front of your house. So I mean, it would just be very out of alignment with what we see all around the city to do this. So I'm kind of not sure I see a solution here.
I'm just trying to
I don't see.
look, I'm looking at the property. I'm just trying to see where, because the photographs that were presented, that's not the property that's not on the property where there's that parking to the left of the house.
Right, that's next door.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's what I was just trying to figure out. Where exactly is the parking located? Is it to the right of those stairs if you're looking at the house?
Yes, ma'am. It would be 3 foot off the right side of the property line, as in the drawing, and then make it permeable as well. What I did is I had the yard actually graded towards the street, right? So that we don't have any drainage issues or anything like that.
Okay.
Um,
I was just trying to figure, I was looking at it and making sure I was looking at the right thing.
oh, yes, ma'am.
Thank
No worries. I'm sorry, it's hard to hear.
I was just saying, if you were to put a parking pad in the proposed area, you essentially wouldn't have a front yard anymore.
Not much, not much. But like I said, you know, with the difficulties of parking on the street, it's just kind of like, you know, that's better than nothing, you know, for as far as the rest of the residents on the street. You've
Yeah.
got several duplexes and fourplexes in the area. They might have 6, 7 cars just for that one address, you know? So it's as well as the traffic from the hospital. It's, you know, so it's been developed.
This is a fairly citywide thing, right? I mean, I don't think, is there any place in the city where we're allowed to park in front of a house? I mean, unless there's a garage, right? There's a garage door, you can park in front. So, I mean, this is completely aberrant. So I'm stuck. I don't see any argument that we get past the 9 criteria here. Especially since it's a brand new house. I mean, if had been here for 20 years, then that would be a different matter, but this different discussion, but it's brand new. And there's a house right across the street that complies. So I'm sorry. My I know how I'm gonna go on this one, but I'm not sure how to help you here.
And then by putting the parking there, the other part to consider is that it takes away a parking spot on the street as well.
Right.
And to the applicant's point, there seems to be few and far between at this point.
Yeah, I fortunately don't see a way around the 9 criteria here, but I do wonder why Washner employees are parking on your street, though. I thought they had significant parking in garages on the facility, and so, you know, a solution may be more so about, I don't know, working with your council member or someone and the institution to understand why so many staff or employees are parking on a residential street when they should have plenty of parking on their campus. So
And even if it's not staff, even if it's visitors, again,
Maybe.
they should be parking in
yeah,
there.
there's significant parking. I do know that there's probably other medical buildings and other businesses, so it could be a combination of those things. Perhaps, but I would say the same thing, that probably need to have some conversations to ensure that the businesses are adequately using their designated parking and directing their visitors, you know, to their appropriate designated parking.
I mean,
But
if you were just to take a look at it, I mean, between, you know, Robert, Upper Line, Clara, Willow, that whole section is filled every day, you know? I mean, it is, it's undeniable, you know?
And I'm not at all, you know, disagreeing. I mean, I think that location, you know, may be pretty active, but it goes back to kind of what we're discussing, you know, just in line with what is allowed and permitted. This is a huge leap because parking in the front yard is, you know, squarely not permitted, but for the scenarios where you may have had, you know, like a driveway, I mean, a parking garage, and you know, pull into the parking garage. But other than that, and other than some grandfathered properties, and this is a brand new build, so it wouldn't fit that model either.
Right. I
Yeah,
mean,
and to Matt's point, I think that, yeah, there are ways to get residential parking requirements enacted in the neighborhood, which would maybe all your neighbors need to get together to agree to that, but you would certainly get at least
Yep.
people off the street that aren't living there.
But there's residential, there's designated signage that would require it to be residential parking, and there's I think there's like a 2-hour maximum if you're parked in one of those spots.
okay, to try and have have the street to where it's only 2-hour parking.
For non-residents, correct, and you
Correct.
would be able to get a permit as a resident, demonstrate you own property or live on the street, and you'd be able to park there as long as you like. Whereas visitors can only park for 2 hours.
Already, well, if, if I just ask you that you please take that into consideration, that this neighborhood is building up like crazy, you know?
No, we totally understand, but there's, all of the criteria we need to meet to get this to pass. And then if, there's a reason why we have this process, and it's not just.
I mean, this part of the city is just such a struggle with, parking.
And the nice thing about New Orleans zoning is that you're not required to have a parking place in historic neighborhoods with historic lots. It makes it more developable, but it means also that you have to be creative about, you do want a parking spot, how you get it to fit. So.
Well, also didn't, whenever I bought the property, like I said, we didn't have those issues, even while I was building,
True, but the code hasn't changed that would allow you, like, the house across the street that has the compliant parking spot existed when the lot was vacant. So I think there's a model for that. And I mean, your house looks great. It's really nice. And I feel for you, but I can't get it past the threshold of what we need to satisfy in our BZA waiver procedure here.
And taking into consideration, to the point that parking is so limited that now you would be taking away a parking space as well. So I mean, there's a lot that happens by doing this. And I do think the 2-hour parking, seeking that option is probably a better solution for all of the neighbors, because obviously you're all facing the same dilemma. I think that helps for everyone.
how do I go about applying to get that done?
Probably, is that Public Works?
I think Public Works.
Public Works.
Yeah, Public Works Department maintains that program.
But I think if you reach out to does the staff at city council have help with that as well? I know there's a process,
Sure
and you
they
have
do.
to get all your neighbors to sign a letter together.
Mhm.
I believe it has to go through the neighborhood association as well.
I don't think that'll be an issue. Okay.
And go to your neighborhood association group and talk to them about it. I mean, I've been talking about this for years with my street and my neighborhood, because I don't have parking, and I just want to be able to park in front of my house, but I can't. So I live in a commercial street. But it's because people do this. They park on my street because they don't have to pay to park. So my
Right.
street fills up.
That's exactly right. Yep. Makes sense.
One of the benefits, I guess,
There
of
might
me
be.
living somewhere else where we don't have those parking concerns.
There might be a lot of parking meters on a street nearby where people are avoiding, and so they park on your street because they don't have to pay. So DPW, they can revisit that and look at and see if they should reallocate where those spaces are metered, so it doesn't put as much pressure on your block. So
I believe there's a pay to park, something like on the corner somewhere
Probably.
that people, once it's, but there's only so many cars that could fit there.
Yep.
And then once that's done, it's, it's open reign,
Any other questions, board members? Their motion?
motions in order. Regarding BZA docket 002-23, move to deny the request for a waiver of articles number 11, section 3B3, parking pad location, Article 22, section 22-8A1B, permitted vehicle parking locations, Article 22, section 2211D1, parking pad location, and Article 22, section 2211D2, parking pad design. Accepting the staff's finding that the request fails to meet any 4 of the 9 criteria, the standards for variance of Article 4, section 4.6F of the comprehensive zoning ordinance.
Second.
Thank you. With regard to BZA docket 002-23, it's been moved by Commissioner Rufo, second by Commissioner Gonzalez, to deny the requested waivers, finding that the 9 criteria have not been met. Vote your screens. The motion carries. Next item.
Item 7, docket 003-23.
The next item is BZA 003-23 for a property located at 1124 Louisiana Avenue. This request is for a variance from provisions of Article 21, Section 21.6.n.1.a of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to permit retention of a fence with excessive height after the fact. In accordance with Article 22, Section 21.6.n.1.a, the permitted maximum fence height in the HURD2 Historic Urban Two-Family Residential District is 7 feet. The applicant is seeking a variance to retain a fence with the excessive height of 9 feet 3 inches. Adequate public notice was not provided in addition to staff awaiting plan revisions in order to adequately review the request. To ensure proper public notice is provided and revised plans are submitted, staff recommend a 30-day deferral of the requested variance.
Is there anyone here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 003-23? Anyone here in opposition? Any questions from the board? Is there a motion?
Madam Chair.
30.
In regards to docket 003-23, I move for a 30-day deferral. And I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. With regards to BZA docket 003-23, been moved by Commissioner Gonzalez, second by Commissioner Eggins to defer the matter 30 days at the request of staff. Vote your screens. Motion carries. Next item.
Item 8, docket number 004-23.
Good morning. Docket number ZZA 004-23. It was a request for variance from the provisions of Article 11, Section 11.3.8.1, which is in Table 11.2A, and Article 11, Section 11.3.8.3 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to build a single-family residence with insufficient side, corner, and rear yard setbacks. Staff is recommending a 30-day deferral due to, since the initial application was received, there have been additional deficiencies identified by the Office of Safety and Permits. In order to allow staff to determine what additional waivers are needed, we recommend a 30-day deferral.
Thank you. Is there anyone here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 004-23?
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Ritter. I am a resident of Pearl Street that's impacted by this house. We also would request that you grant the deferral for 30 days so that these issues can be resolved that substantially impact our neighborhood.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in support of the applicant? Anyone here in opposition? Any questions from the board? Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, in regards to BZA 004-23, I move for a 30-day deferral, as recommended by staff.
Second.
Thank you. With regard to BZA docket 004-23, it's been moved by Commissioner Gonzalez, second by Commissioner Eggins to defer the matter 30 days at the request of staff. Vote your screens. And the motion carries. Next item.
Item 9, docket 006-23.
BZA 623 is a request. It's a request for a variance in the provisions of Article 10, Section 10.3.a of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to permit a standard restaurant with insufficient open space ratio. So the site historically did not provide any open space, which is similar to 100% of the surveyed neighboring properties. The applicant will utilize the proposed addition for back of house, as well as sanitation and life safety operations. These operations are vital to the operation of a standard restaurant. Staff finds that the request meets all 9 of the 9 criteria for variances. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the request subject to 5 provisos.
If you could give your name and address for the record.
Hey, good morning. Mike Sherman, 800 Barone Street, New Orleans, 70113. Here on behalf of the applicant. I'm also joined by members of the Nano team, which is the architectural team for the project. I want to thank Ms. McMillan for a really thorough staff report. We have nothing to add. This is a great project. We're restoring an open space nonconformity that existed for many, many years. It's a great project. We would ask for your support, and both the Nano team and our team are here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 006-23? Anyone here in opposition? You could come up, please.
Thank you. My name is Glade Bilby. I live at 606 Esplanade. I'm president of French Quarter Citizens. I'm a commissioner on the French Quarter Management District. I'm here in opposition to granting this variance for 614, 616 Conti, basically because when you look at this as a complete disregard for the numbers in the table 10.2 in Article 10, it doesn't even give a little bit of a consequential look at what the numbers are. And I think this actually adds to some of the problems we have here and brings up a larger issue that we were talking about in the quarter specifically as a total disregard for the CZO. At what point are the laws actually adhered to? You might ask yourself. It seems that residential groups like mine at French Quarter Citizens are here constantly opposed to something, when in fact, if you look at it, we are in support of things. We're in support of the rule of law. We're support of following zoning. We're support of actually following the tables that specifically relate to this particular situation. A lot of times these entities will hire good attorneys that know the law, and we would counsel them to counsel their clients to follow the comprehensive zoning ordinance and maybe not quite get as much fee as they would coming up here fighting something, but be better for the community. Also, there's tremendous pressure on city agencies on an economic level to bend the laws or grant variances or do things in favor of specific entities that that usually are at the expense of the law and are a detriment to the community and the residents who rely on this board to not enforce the law, but to ensure that the laws are properly adhered to. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in opposition to BZA docket 006-23? The applicant has an opportunity to rebut.
Thank you. In light of Dr. Bilby's comments, I'll add a little bit more on this because I have great respect for Dr. Bilby and the organization. So this is a historic condition. There was a historic nonconformity. There was a lot of excitement when this building owner announced a renovation. The project started and paused during COVID for a couple years. And when it paused during COVID, Safety and Permits determined that it would need to apply for a new variance to maintain the existing historic condition. This is a properly zoned restaurant. It's a great historic restoration that's working its way through the VCC. The main building's already been through the VCC process. After this variance, hopefully with a favorable outcome, we'll move to the rear building. We are not building anything more than has historically existed for a long time on this exact site. In fact, this is the type of development that I think folks want more of in the French Quarter. We had a fantastic NPP meeting and follow-ups with adjacent neighbors after, because we were adding something that so many residents wanted, which was a good restaurant. And this has long before our property owner acquired it been a long neglected property. So this is exactly the type of team you'd want to see, a great architect in Nano, a great contractor in Gibbs, using all of the historically appropriate techniques. I listened very closely to the opposition, and all I can say is we are merely restoring an existing non-conforming condition that was lost when the project paused for more than 6 months. So the open space ratio is no different than it's been for a long time. We've got a great responsible owner, and I'd like to make sure that after this, they continue to They visit with French Quarter citizens. We've met with VC Pora already and other groups. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? I think, Mr. Sherman, you actually answered the one question that I had, just to ensure that there wasn't an expansion of the existing condition. That was the one thing that one question that I had. Were there any questions?
I had the exact same question. Answer.
Is there a motion? And thank you for recognizing, coordinating with the, having your owner coordinate with the opposition to meet with them.
Can I make a motion? All
I'm
right.
sorry.
No, it's all right. In regards to docket BZA 006 23, I move to accept the staff's recommended approval with the noted 5 provisos.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Diaz, second by Commissioner Eggins to grant the requested waiver, finding that the 9 criteria have been met and subject to 5 provisos. Vote your screen. Motion carries. Next item.
We will now begin with new business for safety and permits decision appeals. Will the chair please read the hearing rules for decision appeals?
I actually read them earlier. Do I need to do them? We had one under unfinished.
That's right, my bad. Okay. Then it's new business for Director of Safety and Permits Decision Appeals, item 10, docket number 00523.
Are you all ready for us? All right. Hello, my name is Nick Kindle, zoning administrator with Department of Safety and Permits, and I have Ashley Becknell, the chief zoning official, here with me. So this is BZA docket 0523 relative to 82123 Adams Street. The applicant's appeal alleges an error in the decision of the director of the Department of Safety and Permits regarding the issuance of permit number 22-25821-RNVS. The subject property, 82123 Adams Street, is the location of 2 principal structures with 5 total dwelling units between the 2 structures. The property owner received a building permit to do an addition to connect the 2 structures into 1 structure and to reduce the number of dwelling units from 5 to 2. Each of the units has a living room, a kitchen, a dining room, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a laundry/storage room. The property owner applied for a renovation permit on August 26, 2022, and the permit was issued on October 12, 2022. The subject property is located in both the University area off-street parking overlay district and the University area off-street parking interim zoning district. The overlay has been in effect since November 18th, 2021, and the IZD just went into effect when City Council adopted motion M 22-449 on October 6, 2022. Therefore, only the overlay was in effect when the application was submitted, but the IZD was adopted prior to the issuance of the building permit. CZO 1.5.H states that an application that has been received and is complete is subject to the rules in effect on the date the complete application was received. A complete application was received on the date the application was submitted on August 26, 2022. Therefore, the application is reviewed under the CZO regulations that were in place at that time, which was the overlay and not the IZD. The appellant's main point is this permit should have been reviewed under the IZD. That is not correct because the applicant submitted a complete application prior to the adoption of the IZD. This permit was subject to the requirements in the overlay district. The overlay district requires one parking space be provided for each new bedroom. However, there are a number of exemptions. In accordance with CZO 18.30.B3, this off-street parking requirement shall not apply to new construction of dwelling units with 4 or fewer bedrooms or renovation of existing dwelling units where the total number of bedrooms is 4 or fewer as determined by the Department of Safety and Permits. Furthermore, the CZO 18.30B1 states that bedroom shall be defined as an enclosed room that cannot be used for any other purpose such as kitchen, bathroom, dining room, living room, or laundry room. Any room not explicitly labeled as a kitchen, bathroom, dining room, living room, or laundry room shall be counted as a bedroom. The plans provided with this permit are exempt from providing additional off-street parking because each dwelling unit has 4 bedrooms under the bedroom definition in this overlay. Therefore, the approved plans were compliant with the CZO regulations that were in place at the time of a complete application was submitted. Most of the issues raised by the appellant are based on the incorrect assertion that this permit should have been subject to the IZD requirements. One additional point made by the appellant is that the structure should require a variance for deficient side yard setback because in accordance with CZO 25.2G3, when more than 50% of the structure is voluntarily demolished, it shall be treated as new construction with respect to any non-conforming setbacks. Based on the initial plan submitted by the applicant for this building permit, there was not more than 50% voluntary demolition. However, stop work order was issued for exceeding the scope of the approved demolition. If the Department of Safety and Permits determine that this is more than a 50% demolition, then the property owner will either have to comply with the interior side yard setback or receive a variance of that requirement. The department believes that the building permit was approved in accordance with the comprehensive zoning ordinance, and for the reasons stated in this report, the department's decision should be upheld. Thanks.
Thank you. The applicant can proceed. If you could give your name and address for the record as well.
Susan Johnson, 2822 LePage Street. I am not paid to be here. I'm a native of Carrollton. And I have 2 topics to address in response to the staff report. Number 1, bathroom count. The permit as issued creates 3 full bathrooms per unit, and this is incorrect. Total number of bathrooms is less than 3 per unit per 18.30.B4. Jay Dufour was reviewing the work permit for 1015 Adams by this very standard in the spring of 2022. So I don't understand the email of Todd Breckman about October 5 about a change in interpretation of this point. 4 bedrooms or fewer and fewer than 3 bathrooms are required so as not to trigger extra parking. It's not either or, it's both and. Okay, that's the technical minor point. Topic 2, safety and permits is correct in stating that the overlay governed this permit during the time of review. But I still have an argument, and it involves a general principle. The urgency involved in establishing an IZD, emergency zoning regulations that are temporarily imposed while the city reviews existing zoning ordinances for appropriate revisions to protect public health, safety, welfare per CZO Article 19.2. How does this general principle affect the development of this 821-23 Adams in particular? The proposed building contains 8 bedrooms, 2 dining rooms. With the overlay, as Mr. Kendall just said, any room not explicitly labeled as a kitchen, bathroom, dining room, living room, laundry room shall be counted as a bedroom. The amended IZD of October 6, 2022 removes the dining room from this list. Dining rooms are now considered de facto bedrooms because too many enclosed dining rooms were showing up in architects' plans for D2Ds. The amended IZD assumes that 10 bedrooms will be installed in this building, not 8. So what's the public emergency about bedroom count? It sounds very bourgeois. How are bedrooms, code word for density, a problem of health, public health, safety, or welfare. Take an early development on Butte Street, same developer, purchased in 2019, converted from 2-bedroom shotgun into 10-bedroom house, 10 students. The homeowners next door put up with the noise as long as they could. The house was shaking every night. They finally sold their house to a 2-lane parent. In the process of moving across town, one of the owners had a stroke. Public health, safety, or welfare. This is just one story from the neighborhood. People are being forced out of their homes. As I wrote in my appeal letter, 35% of the houses identified as purchased for private dorm development were formerly owner occupied. 20 of these were purchased in the past 5 years. This is in addition to neighbors selling to 2-lane parents. You don't hear about this on the news. People moving out. People need to sell their homes to someone so they don't advertise their problems. No one's filing a class action suit against the developers or 2-lane. Instead, we come here. For this building, the staff report states the plans were reviewed when the overlay was in place, not the IZD. But by the time the application review was complete, however, not the application, but the review, on October 11th, the IZD was in place. Let's go back to the law about IZDs. 19.3.c procedure point 5, applications determined to be complete and received prior to the adoption of such motion as above may be reviewed and processed under existing regulations. It's not that they must be reviewed and processed. I'm not telling you what to do, what you should do. I mean, I'm really not. It's that they may. Is this decided at the discretion of the BZA? Is it within your power to re-review and reprocess the plans under the new IZD? I ask you now, please, to consider doing so, allowing this at this late date. The rest of the project is in flux as described. HDLC retention review, stop work order, etc. So will you throw it out? Would you? I'm asking you if you would. This would mean that instead of 10 bedrooms going into this development, according to the overlay, just 6 bedrooms would go in under the amended IZD because they can't add parking. 3 bedrooms per unit, which is what the CPC originally intended for the overlay back in July 2021. The CPC will talk about amending the overlay again on January 24th. I hope we get it right this time. Anyway, this is what I'm asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 005-23? Anyone here in opposition?
Hello, Preston Tedesco, 1533 Broadway here in opposition.
Can you pull the mic up a little bit? It's just hard to.
In opposition to the appeal. I'd like to say that we agree with the city's determination that this permit was properly issued. We do a lot to work with the rules in place at the time of permit filing, especially because they change so much, and we have to constantly update and amend plans that, if they haven't been filed, to make sure they adhere to the current rules in place. When this permit was filed, it adhered to every rule in place at the time of the application submission with the plans. And I think the city obviously recognized that, and that's why they approved our permit. I'm the developer of the property in question. And if you guys had any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here in opposition to the applicant? The applicant has an opportunity to rebut.
Well, I don't have anything extra to say. I mean, I understand that the overlay was in place, but the ICD was enacted while the application was in play. I mean, the review. before the permit was issued. So again, this is our recourse to come to you to ask for help with this. And we're going to keep talking to you. That's all I can say. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? At one point, I wanted to kind of get back to the, before I had a couple of questions, but I think one of the points that the applicant brought up kind of brings us kind of to where we were, where I was gonna go. You kind of indicated in your comments whether or not the department had to take action under the IZD, and the language that you read said may be reviewed as though it was permissive. And the way that our review of the department's decisions are is whether or not we determine that there was an error in their decision. And to your point, if the language was permissive, that they weren't required to review, even taking the argument that the if we were to assume that the application would have been submitted timely or in accordance with prior to the tongue-tied, submitted prior to the IZD being in place. Your statement was that it may be reviewed under the IZD, but not that it had to be reviewed. So to take that language, there would not be an error if they did not review this application under the IZD, since it was a permissive requirement and not a mandatory requirement. But based upon the language that the staff presented, I just want to clarify from staff when the application was submitted, if that is when the clock starts to determine if it was appropriate to review this under the IZD or not. Because I believe the applicant was representing that it was reviewed and closed in October, as opposed to utilizing the August date.
So hopefully I have understand your question correctly. So
Trying to understand what's the proper date to say that whether or not it would be required to that this application would have been required to be reviewed under the IZD.
So we use the date a complete application was submitted because, you know, sometimes applications are submitted and reviewed immediately. Sometimes it might take weeks or months potentially to review an application. So, you know, we go based on when the rules were put in effect and the application was submitted, because that's what's in the applicant's control, not necessarily when the Department of Safety and Permits reviews that application.
You kind of answered my second point, because that's what I was going to ask. They've submitted something in August, but then a rule changes in September or October. At the time that they submitted their application, that rule was not in effect. So they wouldn't be required to comply with something that wasn't in effect at the time that their application was submitted.
Right, that is correct, because some permits get reviewed quickly, others take more time. And so to be as equitable to everyone, we look at when the application was submitted.
That was the only questions that I had.
Well, how does this speak to the IZD as an emotion, as an emergency measure?
I think it still goes to the point of when something is in effect at the time that an application is submitted. So it's still to the point that at the time that this applicant submitted their application, that IZD wasn't in effect, regardless of what the purpose of the IZD was. It wasn't in effect at the time that the application was submitted. So to hold someone to something that they couldn't anticipate at that point in time wouldn't be appropriate.
Well, that's understandable, but could you please explain the business about the permissive?
Well, I was just going off of your statement in your comments. You said specifically that the application may be reviewed under the IZD, but that it was not required. And so you asked for us to consider requiring them to review the to review the application under the IZD. And I just wanted to clarify that our role is to determine whether or not there was an error. And if it was arguable that they were not required to review this under the IZD, then we can't hold them accountable to an error if they did not commit an error. An error would have been to do something or to not do something that they were required to do. And to your own point, they were not required to review this under the ICD. Are there any other questions from the board? Is there a motion? I don't think your mic is on. Just turn it on.
How about that?
Yep.
Okay. In regards to BZA 005-23, I move to deny the appeal and uphold the decision of the Director of Safety and Permits, finding that there was not an error in the interpretation of the comprehensive zoning ordinance.
Second.
Thank you. With regard to BZA docket 005-23, it's been moved by Commissioner Gonzalez, second by Commissioner Diaz, to uphold the decision of the Director of the Department of Safety and Permits, finding that there is not an error in that decision. Vote your screens. Motion carries. Next item.
See you next month, 1117 Pine.
We will now begin with new business for any other matters. Item 11, consideration amendment to the 2023 Board of Zoning Adjustments meeting schedule. The advertisement deadline for public notice was recently changed, so the 2023 timeline has been adjusted to show the new deadline, which falls on a Monday instead of a Tuesday. Additionally, the deadline for submittal of materials for the June meeting falls on Memorial Day, so the timeline has been adjusted to reflect the modified deadline. Would the board consider a motion to amend the 2023 schedule?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Gonzalez, second by Commissioner Eggins, to adopt the amended timeline for the meeting schedule for 2023. Vote your screen. Motion carries. Are there any other items?
Nope. Would the board consider a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Dear God, yes, please.
It's
Second.
been- It's been moved by Commissioner Rufo, second by Commissioner Diaz, to adjourn today's meeting. Vote your screen. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.